All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's fireside chat on harnessing technology to reimagine energy, brought to you by Jewel Digital Ventures and 1337 Ventures in partnership with ASNB. Our speakers for today's session is Aadrin Azly, Chief Digital Officer at Petronas Group, and Mazlin Erawati, Chief Executive Officer at Setel. Adrian Azly is the Chief Digital Officer of Petronas and the Chief Executive Officer of Petronas Digital Sendirian Berhad, a wholly owned subsidiary of Petronas. Adrian leads a team of digital experts to transform the digital revolution landscape of Petronas. Adrian joined Petronas in 1999 and held various senior management positions. Among his contributions includes leading the delivery of Petronas' group-wide digital agenda at scale and pace, including establishing key enterprise building blocks such as cloud, connectivity, and enterprise data hubs. He was also pivotal in the ideation and implementation of multiple digital and business ventures within PDB. Adrian is a graduate from University of Adelaide in Bachelor of Commerce and Advanced Management program from Harvard Business School. Mazlin is the Chief Executive Officer of Setel. Prior to joining Setel, Mazlin was the head of venture building in Petronas Dagangan Berhad. Mazlin leads the growth in Setel, Malaysia's first mobile application platform that provides customers at Petronas stations nationwide with a seamless and customized retail on-the-go experience, together with their online merchants and retail partners. Under her leadership, Setel continues its efforts to partner various online platforms to connect with a wider digital base. Mazlin is a graduate from University of Melbourne in the Bachelor of Commerce and Finance. Today's session will be moderated by Bikesh Lakmishan, the founder and CEO of 1337 Ventures. Without further ado, let us welcome Adrin, Mazlin, and Bikesh on stage.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Can you see me? Let's just get them on camera first. And for those that are tuned in, as usual, if you've been following the sessions we've been having on Air Meet, you have the Q&A tab. So if you have any questions for Mazlin and Aadrin, then go ahead, just type it in the chat. Hey guys, welcome.
Hi,
Hi, hi.
Vikesh. Hi,
Nice to see you
everyone.
again. Hi, everyone.
Good to see all of you. So we had quite a mouthful of explanation who's here with us today. So in short, maybe you just want to give us a quick roundup of what's the difference in your roles? Because we have the CDO of Petronas, but the CEO, not CEO of Petronas, CEO of Setel. How do you explain layman terms? What do you do?
Wanna
Let's
go
start with
first?
Mazlin. Mazlin,
Okay,
Mazlin.
I'm the CDO of Petronas, and
Okay.
in short, I'm the big punching bag for Petronas. If anything goes wrong, then I'm to blame. No, but just kidding. Basically, I look at the digital transformation and the whole digital and IT delivery for the Petronas Group. Now, within the Petronas Group, as part of our digital revenue creation, we've also created ventures, specific ventures, and one of our most successful ones and the ones that we are very proud of is Setel. Over to you.
Okay, very good. Mazlin, yeah, tell us more.
So while Adrian looks at the enterprise lens, I look at the customer's lens, B2C lens. So the intent then was to use digital as a means to transform customer experience at the station. It's a symbiotic relationship. Adrian sits on my board and therefore proves all our funding requirements. But because we understand our roles and what digital does to play in the context of enterprise and the customers, the pace of delivery and how that affects the wider, I guess, ecosystem is big.
Okay, so Adrian will basically look at very internal requirements, and then you'll be looking at the external facing customer side stuff. That'll be interesting to have a look. So how different are the two of your worlds? Let's talk about from a culture angle itself. Tell me, how is it like internally in Petronas? Sounds like very enterprise, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me, is it different or is it similar?
I think there are similarities, but I think from a culture and just from the DNA, it's slightly different. We are what we call a digital enterprise, and my main and only customer, I guess, at the moment is Petronas Group. And the way that we set it up this way, because we acknowledged early on that by transforming Petronas to be a digital organization, there is already a lot of upsides and value that we can create there. So rather than, ensure that our focus is aligned, and because it's Petronas is quite a large entity, it makes sense for us just to double down and focus on Petronas. So a lot of our solutions are more B2B operational improvements, and I would say that we are also coming from an IT enterprise kind of DNA. It is not from a startup digital native or digital first mindset. So, for example, a lot of the enterprise solutions, we also look at things. We do build some, but we also look at the run and maintain. We look at cybersecurity. We work a lot with outside vendors. So the key role is basically understanding the problem and looking for solutions which we can build, or we can look at things outside, but we also ensure things like the basic things like connectivity, maintenance, security, which is, I guess, a slightly different view from Mazlin.
So you do all the boring stuff, basically. Yes. Okay.
More or less, dude. I was really trying to make it sexy, but you took the words out of my mouth.
And Maslin, how's culture on your side?
Yeah, I guess where there are things in common, where we look at problems and trying to solutionize for them, I think I have the fun job, right? I look at problems that customers have today, and I guess the talent pool that we have within Setel are all from mostly startups, where they are empowered to come up with solution. Our releases are once every 2 weeks at minimum, sometimes every week. Young bunch of talents. Our average age is about 29. And I guess for us, it's really the satisfaction of getting firsthand of what the customers are saying, whether they like it or they don't like it, and how do we then iterate from there. But because we're a lot, I would say, more faster paced than what Aadrin has to do within the group. There's a lot more for me when I look at the two groups, more excitement around the bills, more excitement around what gets launched, and more importantly, how we then respond to the customers as a means to improve our services.
Okay. So just generally everything is a little bit more faster on your side, including maybe hiring. So you won't have from the mothership policies and governance that kind of tie your hands to that extent. Very nice, very nice.
I think we were very deliberate at the onset to ensure that the biasness of having a big corporate mother will not trickle down to Setel. And so we were very prescriptive with our requirements when we start this out. To say, in order for us to succeed, in order for us to make this work, some of these things have to be sort of curated for Setel. So our own policies, our own hiring, our own TNCs, and really our own way of doing.
Do they still get the nice benefits of Petronas then?
Yeah.
Well, funding is not a difficult issue per se compared to the rest of the startups, I feel. But it's not easy to get funding from Petronas, having said that as well. But yeah, I feel like we have the front end or the fun end of the bargain without the baggage of the corporate world.
Okay.
Having said that, Vikesh, I think I need to weigh in a bit, because sometimes it's not slow because just on the culture and we are inherently slow. I think you need to understand as well that sometimes what we deal with in terms of the impact and the scalability and the blast radius is it's just so much wider, right? So because of that, I think some level of perhaps thinking through in terms of the impact, thinking through of the trade-offs becomes a bit more complex. So I think this is where we need to trade off certain things like pace or the innovation to try new things and to MVP But when you're doing things at really a huge scale and you're touching real life operations, you're touching productions, it's perhaps not that easy to move as fast. So sometimes, of course, I would love for things to be more exciting, more fun, and move faster. But sometimes it's also there's a deliberateness in doing it this way because we're trading off in terms of scale and impact, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess that's what we see from the larger incumbents like banks and insurance companies now, right? They're all trying to be a little bit more innovative, spin out different units that look at innovation. But I think then you guys could be that success story in terms of how do you spin that out and not be so tethered to the mothership that that same regulations and governance comes in and slows them down. Like how Mazlin was saying, internally in this unit, you could redefine policies of hiring and procedures and governance and compliance, right? I think that that was part of your secret of your success. So it's pretty interesting to see
I
that.
think for us, the acknowledgement from the very top that this needs to be done differently, and the autonomy that's given to this team to run with, the solution they feel best serve the customers, and how that gets trickled down all the way to respective operating unit. I think that's admirable. They had that foresight early on, and that sets the tone for all the other ventures as you've seen, coming up from Petronas of late. Gentari was one of them. They wanted to, establish an entity outside the motherhood, a mothership rather. And there are, I guess, pros and cons to doing that, but I see it as more pros, in the sense where when you're not encumbered, your flexibility and your creative freedom gets better. And so, but again, because we do have that relationship with the group, a lot of things that we want to do also get supported. So in terms of adoption, in terms of advocacy, the group helps us with that as well.
Okay.
Because Bikesh, that really is the paradox, right? If you think about what is the real win in this space in digital, I think it's where you can really merge the two sides of the coin. On one hand, you got the startups, the young upstarts. They're almost driven by people with ownership and equity, founders. So from there, inherently, you have pace, you have a lot of that ownership, and people just doing what it takes to solve problems and grow. But on the downside is actually sometimes you can't scale. And when it comes to a certain growth, you cannot operationalize it and you cannot go, the problems that you're solving is not big enough. So because of that, scale is always the downside of startups. On the other hand, you've got, enterprise innovation organizations such as myself, and it's almost a direct inverse, right? We have the opportunity to solve big problems. We've got the playground to really make a significant impact, and it's scalable. And whatever improvements we do, the value creation is immediately there. But then you lack in terms of that ownership, that pace, that ability to just be able to be nimble. So the real winner for me is someone really that can match the two, right? Somebody who has the DNA of a startup, but have the scale, the reach, the size of an enterprise. It's easier said than done. And I think that's what we try to do here in Petronas as well, where we're set up as different. We acknowledge that we're different, but between myself, Mazlin, Gentari, we always create this community that hopefully we rub each other off, right? A bit of my carefulness on looking at some of the cybersecurity protocols, she can learn from that, and I learn on how to code software better and how to be a bit more, taking a bit more risk when it comes to solutions. So the idea is, hopefully over time, both our units can hit that sweet spot, which is startup at scale. And I think those are the real winners that we've seen so far. The real unicorns and all that, people with that DNA, but has reached a scale that is significant.
So then how would the strategy of innovation work between your two different units? Or just note to the technical
Just
team.
note to the
There's
technical
a
team.
feedback.
There's a feedback.
Okay.
So like you're
I
saying,
think
right?
for
So, like
me,
you're saying, right?
yeah.
Internally,
Right.
because
Internally, because you're just serving
your parent, which
your
is
parent, which
Petronas.
is Petronas.
So how much
So,
innovation do you
how much
need
innovation do you
internally
need
to build products?
internally to build products?
It could just be a line of
It could
business
just be a line
application
of business application.
Right.
versus a
fair
Mazlin side
Mazlin
that
side
has to think
that
about
has
new
to think
ways
about
customers
new
would
ways
engage
customers
with
would engage with
Setel and the pump
Setel
and the
and the pump
ecosystem
and
around
the
it.
ecosystem around it.
Because I think just naturally anything that is B2C or touching customers inherently becomes more interesting. It's just, I think, the fact that it's something more familiar with us, right? We don't need to have any context. We don't need to know a lot of details to know when it comes to B2C. So when we talk about innovation, there's always been a lot of limelight on innovation that is touching the B2C world. But I think having said that, if we really look at the big problems that we're trying to solve, a lot of this are also in the B2B space, right? Making sure that people are safer at work, making sure that we can really look at the energy trilemma, right? How do we make energy that is more available, more affordable, and also cleaner? So these are just some examples that I feel just because it's B2B doesn't mean it's inherently more boring. In fact, the biggest problems globally that we want to solve can be in the B2B. It just takes a lot more context. Not many people understand it.
More concerted effort.
More
across
concerted
industry.
efforts to do it across. Because of that, it takes a lot more time. There's a lot less limelight, I guess, because not many people would all be interested in it. But I think what I believe we can offer to people who wants to come in is, you want to solve problems, you want to be innovative, you want to be creative. I can give you big problems and a huge playground to play. That's the attraction. That's why young, bright people join me. They know that they're not going to be, when they go Hari Raya or Chinese New Year, their family is not going to talk about it. It's not like if they're working with Setel or TikTok or Instagram, but they're here to solve big problems in the energy sector, and they can play anywhere, right? You can play from downstream to upstream to gas, globally, international, and that breadth of space, that's what we offer. And I think, to me, I still think that's innovative and challenging.
So then internally, would you do something
would you
like
do something like
build a platform where your
where your
users
users
can build their own
can build their own
systems,
systems
like no code
like
tools,
no
drag
code
and
tools,
drop?
drag and
So
drop?
it wouldn't be your
It
team doing
wouldn't be
it,
your
but
team
the user
doing it,
itself
the
building
user
stuff.
itself building stuff.
Definitely, because in fact, that's one of our mantra. We look at our levers. One of the cornerstone of this is what I call democratizing digital. Because over time, I sincerely believe I'm going to be redundant, or I hope that my role is redundant, because digital in the enterprise is so ubiquitous throughout your daily lives, right? That it becomes anybody can do it. So, for example, last time, Excel spreadsheet, it probably could be a few trained people who was able to use Excel. I'm showing my age. I still remember that people put on their CVs capability able to use Excel. Now you don't do that anymore, right? Because everybody assume you can use Excel. So it's the same thing from basic coding or basic visualization. What we're doing is we have things like Digital Academy, we have citizen analytics. The whole idea is to provide the tools and the capability so that the traders, the operators, the engineers can do basic visualization or drag and drop coding so that they don't have to always come to Group Digital to create this. So it's a culture, it's a mindset, it's a way of working rather than building applications for people, right? So it's not just about applications and technology. It's really creating that whole culture within the group. That's part of the challenge as well.
So then, what is the innovation dynamics in Petronas? Is there a innovation unit that trickles down innovation to finance, upstream, downstream, you guys, Petronas Dagangan? So how does that work? Who is the innovation unit, or it's everywhere, like a Google, like an Apple?
Okay. I'm wearing my Petronas Secondi hat now. I think in the early days where we wanted to introduce innovation in Petronas, clearly there was a champion, right? And there was a small group of folks who looked into innovation as a requirement or as a license to, I guess, grow and succeed, and how to scale that across the entire group. But obviously, as we embarked on that journey, I would say 2-3 years ago, we found many great ideas within the group. The problem we had was how to execute those ideas, right? And then eventually it became quite widespread that even each operating units were coming up with their own ideas of how to make their business a lot more better, more sustainable. But they are more in control of, I guess, executing those ideas. So I think where we are in Petronas now, we need to have homes for those ideas so that those ideas can be tested, validated, and if good enough to scale, they can do so, right? But I guess for us, it's a good problem to have. I get ideas coming in through many channels across the group for Setel to execute. Some make sense, some not quite. But now the question would be, is Petronas, I guess, fast and nimble enough to create more ventures like Setel in order to execute great ideas? And who knows, you're probably going to have Petronas 2, 3, 4 that is not anchored on oil and gas or, or natural resources. And that now becomes the new Petronas, right? And there are also certain groups that looks at, startups that comes on to pitch their ideas. And I believe Petronas has invested in some. And the idea then was some of these things you want to build in-house, it takes too slow, too long, right? How do you then supercharge these startups who are looking at scale and give them that platform within the Petronas group? And so there are many pockets today, but I would say 3 years on, innovation is already part of our DNA. And that's the only way to survive these days. It's unprecedented in an environment and the climate that we're operating in. How fast can we sort of capitalize on the execution? I think I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I think it's not under one roof per se. It's a few entities that creates our own community. So under Petronas, we've got a thing called Petronas Innovation Engine. So that is one role where they're actually creating a process, but more importantly, they look at tools for people to innovate. So we have a methodology that innovation is gone through a specific methodology so that across the whole Petronas, when we talk about innovation, there is actually a process and a methodology to do that. So that's the main role of the innovation engine. And the output of that, I guess, is ideas. But with ideas, sometimes if you cannot build upon it and there is no tool to turn those ideas into actual prototypes and products, then that's not going to work, right? So that's where my group comes in, where our role is to prototype those ideas and build some of them so that they can create some proof of concept. But rather than self-built, we also look at investing in current startups. So that's another third group, which we call Petronas Ventures. And the idea of a Petronas Venture is to work with startups and we can invest them or create a platform for them to grow. And apart from all this, then people need something to inspire them and to show a success case. And that's where Mazlin and Setel comes in, right? So Mazlin and Setel really becomes that success case that the new ventures can look up to. So it's 4 separate units in one ecosystem, and we just cycle around each other. Sometimes the relationship is not so rosy.
Yeah.
Sometimes we bicker among one another. But I think that creative tension is what makes it so much fun and exciting.
Okay. Just one more question.
Now
One more
we're
question.
heading
Innovation.
Tari in the mix.
Oh,
Yeah, sorry, Bikesh.
yeah. So as Petronas embarking into innovation, what do you think the biggest misconception or myth is for corporates as large as yourself trying to innovate? Like, so just now we had Grab on, right? And Grab was saying, just because I have 15, 20 million customers doesn't mean I can just build anything and these customers would use, right? So what do you think is your biggest misconception of Petronas trying to innovate with an amazing balance sheet for investments, etc.? What would that be?
I mean, I thought having a mother like Petronas would mean that I have access to all these funds that I can tap on almost immediately to realize some of my, I guess, product roadmap. That hasn't been the case. I have to, one way or another, sort of sell that roadmap, pitch that roadmap, and show value out of that roadmap, right? And value can come in many forms. And I guess the first misconception, which I think is true, do they look at bottom line more than growth? Most days, yes. And with digital platform or investment, to get immediate returns, that's not the case, and it's more of educating them that these are the trajectory that any business would go. But by and large, I think making sure that there's value out of their investment is key. And the misconception that I feel is out there is, you have a very rich mother that would just hand you, any amount that you require in the name of innovation or in the name of sexy products. I think that's a big myth.
Adrian?
I think from my point of view is that when people look at digital in Petronas, they think it's really about having the right solution and the right tech. Often enough, that's the easier part. I think finding the right problem is really the issue, because there's so many, across the whole group, so many ideas, so many problems, so many issues. How do you really create that brutal prioritization and really find a problem that is big enough that you really want to focus in? Because if not, you would really be all over the place, and that's buying technology and all that. So for us, we are very clear that we don't come from a technology or a digital solution point of way of thinking. We really think about the problem first. What is the problem that the business is facing? What is the problem that we want to create the actual value to the business? And then we think about solutions, because the biggest challenge is really the adoption. How do we get people to use it? And if you don't understand the problem and the actual customer, I think, when you are B2C, your customer is easy. When you are a corporate entity, sometimes the person that tells you to build the application is not the actual customer. So for example, finance could ask you to build a digital form, but the user is not finance, it's the 40,000 people out there. And if we build it to finance specifications, it may make their lives easier, but nobody's going to use it, because it's 6 pages of digital forms. Who want to do that, right? And when you do that, then that investment really creates zero value. So really understanding the problem, the actual customer, who's going to use it, and then driving adoption, that is the challenge. But a lot of the corporate entities, they get hung up about ideas and tech. And for me, that really is not the way that you should go about innovation, because you're going to go into a lot of dark, empty alleys, and more importantly, you're going to waste a lot of money.
But when you come to the point you know you want a specific solution, is there a preference among you between build, buy, or partner?
That's a great question. In the early days, for Setel, I think because one of the value proposition for talents to join Setel was the ability to build and the creative freedom that comes with the build. And obviously, that was, I guess, our main focus then, build, right? And as we scale, we found that there were reliability issues that we needed to fix, right? So we need to make sure that 10 out of 10 customers who use the Setel will be able to use Setel, right? And then we realized that there was a different pool of talent that's needed to realize that. And then as we expand our roadmap, we realize, okay, in order to deliver this, then we need to hire more people, right? And then, I mean, at what point do you, I guess, optimize that hiring? Before any form of incremental hiring will not give you the returns that the product is meant to give. And so at that point in time, I think maybe about a year and a half ago, we looked at those three options seriously. And we found like-minded partners or like-minded startups that we could, collaborate with, where both platforms can integrate, so that they have access to our channel, we have their services, on our platform, and that could work. And so that has been proven very successful. I think our next phase now is, okay, to supercharge our growth. I think there is no other way to do so than to buy, right? Now the question would be what? And so I think we looked at it from a stage-gated approach. So they are still built, no doubt. The big ones, the big use cases, we need to build ourselves, because we want to make sure that it serves the requirements that we intended it to serve. But yeah, we're looking at opportunities to expand through acquiring.
Aaron, anything to add on that?
For me, it's a portfolio. We can't afford to build all. So when it's a very unique problem and perhaps something that we want to have certain capability on, that's something that we either build or we partner with partners who wants to co-create with us. But when we see it's something that perhaps is quite mature, it's global, and the technology refresh is very frequent, and you need to have a lot of interoperability with outside Petronas, then the decision is always perhaps buy, right? Because then it's going to cost too much to build, and even if we successfully build it, just trying to maintain it and keep up to the pace of the technology refresh is going to be too expensive of a game.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's a portfolio, but we have, like Mazlin said, even for me, we have criterias and we have a technology evaluation process to put it into a build, buy, or partner decision.
Maybe
Okay,
also, if I can add I think the context of which why we choose either three is also, I mean, Setel is digital native, right? We're digital first. To get digital talents out there, it's not easy. Sometimes Aadrin and I are fighting for the same talents, and I've got really young talents in Setel who came fresh from university. They were groomed 3 years and then they were poached by Grab or poached by Shopee. I've had so many talents being poached left, right, center. And so just to anchor on build alone, I feel is too risky. And I think the market is big enough for us to collaborate and integrate with each other, and that would mean that the digital talents will be I mean, forthcoming, but in a different form.
Very cool.
Vikesh,
So,
when she used the word fight, it's very loosely. It's more of her pinching my talent. It's never the other way around. So I don't know how that's considered as fight. It's more of her pinching me.
It's like when Setel and Petronas Digital go out and hire the same job scope. So we sort of have a banter of who do you think they will,
Nice.
go for.
Healthy competition. I'm going to come to the talent question. So then where does the Petronas Ventures then come in, right? So if there's something you say you're willing to partner, do you then give the shopping list to them saying, look, I need to find such solutions. Go out there, either invest in it, or I guess that's what the Future Check Accelerator program will kind of look for partnerships that you may want to embark relationships with?
Yeah, for sure. But it's not exclusively through Future Tech. Again, if the use case is big enough and it's worthwhile for us to invest, that would be, I guess, the preferred role, because then we can look at upsides and we supercharge that startup as well. And there's been a lot of cases where we invest because we know that we want to deploy their tech back into Petronas, right? But by doing so, then the startups will also have a track record and they have that playground to play. So if it works, then brilliant. But then there's a lot of other cases that we can't really go down the investment route. So a lot of these are just through contractual partnerships, where we have a partnership agreement and then we co-create in terms of they invest, perhaps sometimes not just purely in equity, because but also investment in kind, right? Like let's say because I'm a partnership with you, I charge you instead of 100 man hours, I only charge you 80. The 20 you invest on my side, I invest some of my background IP or know-how. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, makes sense. So yeah, so all startups listening on this and other corporates listening. So there are opportunities to partner in Petronas, and even though they may not invest in equity, but they have contracts, and that's worth a lot more with Petronas for sure. So that's great. That's on the table. Coming back to what we're speaking just now, like internally, building stuff for the group, digitalizing the group. How do you prioritize? Like, do you say that no matter what request comes in, even as 5 users, 6 users, 7 users, you're going to build it? Can you prioritize and say no? And when you build it, are there metrics that you kind of measure to see whether there's some return of investments, in this case, manpower, etc.? How do you do that?
This is really the bane of my life, Bikesh. Because to be fair, the company that we have came from an IT background. And with an IT background, it really is about you, the customer, you give me a service form and I will do it for you. And we're still a cost center, right? So technically, whether it creates value or not, whether you use it or not, it's not really my problem. So because of that mindset and DNA, I think the emphasis on customer satisfaction and things like that, it's not natural to the organization that I lead. That's the organizational and transformation that I'm trying to drive within my own company. How can I bring that bit of startup mentality, right? So for example, we're playing, I'll be lying through my teeth to say I figured it out. But there are levers that I'm trying to change. For example, we're changing some of the charging mechanism. For example, rather than just charging on a cost plus right now, we're trying to put a bit of it that's risk towards the value that we create. So if we don't create value, then the business don't get the value, I don't get paid. So again, it's shooting myself in the foot, but I thought it's a necessary evil to drive that change in mindset, right? The other one is in the KPIs before, we've never looked at things like NPS and customer satisfaction. I borrowed shamelessly from Mazlin's KPI and how she tracks downloads, adoption, NPS, customer scores, clicks per page. And I'm trying to inculcate that in my organization so that even though the customer is Petronas, we put ourselves at a standard like we're any other startup.
Okay, very nice. So then the question to Mazlin, right? Like that's why people say the difference between startups and corporates, right? Corporates, the stakeholder is your board and your shareholders. You're doing what they want to give them value. But Mazlin, on your side, since you're external facing, your stakeholders are the customers. So when you build stuff, is it always them in mind, or do you get mothership saying, hey, push this to them? And you go, no, that's not what my customers want. How much can you do in that sense?
So in truth, there will always be requests from the group.
That's the bane of her life.
That's the bane of my life. And obviously, sometimes the request comes because they are trying to fix their own internal problems, right? And they feel by fixing that problem, the customers will be happy, right? And I think for us, we talk to our customers almost daily. I have a research team in-house that does ethno almost on a weekly basis. And we ask them, what do you hate about Setel? Tell us, let us know. And that's the only way I think we can improve, right? And so, again, when we go to the board, what we like to hold dear onto is our product roadmap. And we don't want, I guess, them to have that much say in the product roadmap, right? And obviously, that's the tango between myself and the board. Board here means, the motherhood board, mothership board. But by and large, right, I think because we track every single matrices that shows or that reflects the customer's happiness or unhappiness, it's hard for them to then dictate what we should be doing. For as long as you can prove and you can validate that the customers are very happy and they continuously, I guess, buy more from you, right? And they're sticky towards you. So, and that's the philosophy or the strategy that we've sort of used to convince the board to fund us, right? Without that, I don't think we would get to where we are today with the product roadmap that we want to, I guess, problem solve for our customers. And obviously, sometimes for them, because they're not in this digital frame of mind. They're board members, right? So they work in various industries. Well, they are customer facing, but in various industries, mostly analog than digital. And so they come with their own set of biasness as well, right? And obviously, everybody wants to see the business grow, but in what way, right? So for me, if you stick true to your DNA, to your purpose and your roadmap that makes your customers happy, I believe that is a much more sustainable way to grow the business and large. And for the funders, they sort of keep themselves back and said, okay, we like what we see. Tell me more or show me more. But first thing first, you need to track every single matrices that shows whether your customer is happy with you and that they continue to use you and that when they use you, they buy more from you. So those three matrices are key and important.
But that's also the scary thing, right? Even if you partner with startups, because Petronas is such a giant beast. When you track matrices, like what moves the needle? How much movement do you need to see for Petronas to go like, yes, it's making an impact? Isn't everything so large over there?
I guess for Petronas in the past, right? How would you know if a customer is happy with you? It's hard. These days it's clear. You don't like you're in social media the next minute. So there are some customers who did not like Setel for maybe a reason that the app wasn't available at the point that he wanted to use it or he or she wanted to use it, right? So negative feedback came out and then they tagged Petronas, for example. And it's so immediate, so in your face that and the opposite is also true, right? If they like you, it's so immediate and it's so in your face. And in the past, Petronas didn't have that. So that, I guess, that validation and customer feedback that we didn't get in the past, the data that we didn't get in the past, is worth more than the ROI of an investment in digital.
Yeah, I like to chip in. I guess, I used to lead retail business before this role, right? And one of the challenge we had is just changing the narrative. And retail business here, it's the service stations, the LPG, the lubricants, right? And by and large, there's large segments of the customer that still sees Petronas as a Malaysian company, or some even goes as far as to say it's a Melayu company. And because of that, there's always this narrative that it's not front foot facing. It's not. So the narrative or the positivity is really hard to do, and sometimes I feel when I was leading that it became a zero-sum game, right? You build one station, a competitor builds next door.
Correct.
You build a new toilet, they just refurbish their toilet. So it really becomes a zero-sum game. How do you change the narrative? But I think when we started going into Setel and by and large also that brilliant sponsorship we had with the Mercedes F1 team, that goes a long way in changing the branding and the narrative towards Petronas Dagangan, right? For once, now when I talk to people, the narrative is like, I love Setel, I love how convenient it is. I love how my problems, even though I don't know whether, I didn't even know it was a problem, they solved it for me. So I think that's some of the intangibles, right? This is just me being a customer of Setel, because when I was leading retail, Setel wasn't there yet in the early days. Now it's so much easier to be in retail because Setel provides that beacon of light towards positivity about the whole group. So I think that's also some intangible benefits of investing and doing this.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's like what happened with the telcos, right? Today they're reduced to just being a dumb pipe. You could get data anywhere, lines anywhere. And it's just like you said, it's zero-sum game. If Celcom got more customers, that means one of the others had to lose customers. And they just
That's right.
kept doing that over and over again, not going anywhere. And that's where the OTT solutions is the only way you could make money, right? It's like, I don't want to compete on lines, but could a Maxis user use a service from DG? And that's why they build all the HR. Everyone's trying to be the super app, and I guess Setel is taking that playbook, right? Quite similar.
I guess the possibilities for me at least, right, is a lot bigger because I have a captive market today. What more can I do with this captive market, right? And obviously, playing a digital, I guess playing a digital business or digitalizing for Petronas are two different things. And at the onset, Petronas knew that this is a growth vehicle for us because we know that we're in a dirty business of sorts. And with EV cars penetrating at the rate that they're penetrating, dagangan one day could become obsolete. It may not be so in the next 5 years, but soon, you never know, right? So how can we also defend ourselves in making sure that dagangan continues to live on or Petronas continues to live on in the next 50 years? And if you're not in the digital game, you're not in any game. And so that was I guess, a clever bet that was made 3 years ago. And now I've served my business, right? The possibilities are endless. What more can I do? Which other business can I go into? And I do have an engaged customer base that I can serve. So I think all in all, it's very exciting times for us. And the group is very supportive in, us venturing out and, and give us that big value, that hockey stick that, all other startups are dreaming of. But you don't have to go the Grab way. You don't have to go, the valuation way.
Mm-hmm.
Plain old simple business, make money, profit. That could be a way, right? And that could still remain to be the only way to be sustainable. So I like where we're going with this with the group. And they're very, very supportive.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about talent now, right? So we had Grab on just now, and they're still saying, even though I'm unicorn, I have so many billions, finding the right talent is still an issue. What's it like for you guys, and how do you solve that?
It's hard. It's hard, and it's getting harder, right?
Gosh.
After COVID, one of the positive things are people are able to work from anywhere, but being able to work from anywhere means some of the obstacles towards job hopping has solved itself. So if before this, people have to consider moving different geographical locations and all that, right now, you can hop 4 jobs all from the comforts of your own bedroom in your kain sarung or in your boxes, right? You don't have to go anywhere. So because of that, really the job market has becoming a lot more fluid. And because of that, the cost has somewhat gone up as well. So I think for me, especially, it's trying to hone in on our unique value proposition, right? We're not a B2C, we're not customer facing, but like I said, I still believe there are a lot of talented people, smart people who wants to solve energy challenges, who wants to keep people safe, who wants to create value by ensuring that things are optimized and well maintained. And the playground that we can give is so huge. So that in itself, I think, hopefully can create some attraction. But I'm pivoting as well, before this, the thinking is digital is a game that is played by people that you take from outside, and you want ready-made talents to come into Petronas. We found that it's not as easy, or it's too expensive. So right now, we are pivoting a lot of our portfolio as well into investing at grassroots. So we're doing a lot more work with trying to create employability and enhancing the capabilities for graduates. So, I'm super proud of this novel program we call the Digital Boot Camp, where we have 2 or 3 weeks. We take the fresh grads that comes in, they go through this boot camp, which is quasi like a reality game show, where we take cameras and they have to do challenges, and it's like Survivor. But the end of the 3 weeks or so, the top 20 winners would be given jobs. And this is not jobs in Petronas, but also we get partners to come in. We're lucky to have partners from the industry, just to name a few: Tata Consulting, Microsoft, CATS, Academy of Data Science, all coming together with us to support this program. And we feel, I'm very proud of those things, because one, it creates that pipeline of talents that will come into Petronas Digital and grow together with us. But worst case, even if they don't work with me, it's okay. It's also creating talents for Malaysia and for the region. And hopefully, with this investment that we made in them, they can actually grow, they can create their own startups, they can work outside. But I think this ecosystem is something that we really need to build together. People always talk about creating supply, but if we don't create demand, kids are not they're not stupid, right? I mean, if they don't see perspective in that industry, they're not going to want to go into it. So it's also important to connect both the demand and the supply, so that people see a future, people see a career path, people see that demand within Malaysia. And this is why, for me, for example, organizations such as ASNB and Petronas really needs to play a lot more stronger role in creating that demand, so that the ecosystems can be completed, so that the supply can also be interested in this field.
Yeah, I mean,
Long
the subject
answer.
is on new energy, right? So innovation in upstream is very hard to come by. So then, how does Petronas kind of help let people say, "These are problems that are worth solving, and we're here to help you get access or solve it," right? How do you get someone to think about, "I want to build technologies on hydrogen power"? Like, is a
Yeah.
fresh graduate just going to work on something like that? How does that work?
Yeah, I think, you're right. But what helps, I think, is we try to be very specific and scope it down in terms of the challenge, rather than keep it too broad. People may not know, what is required. So we try to scope out the problem, and we try to put as much context as possible, because it's a challenge that we face every day. But also giving access and opportunities for example, for startups to come in, play. We last year we launched a sandbox within Group Digital, where partners, startups, and companies can just come in and create. And we have a bit of a fun in the sandbox, that people can just come in, play around in the sandbox, have access to information, to assets. And if it works, great, we can accelerate and scale it. If it's not, then, we both of us learn something from each other, right? So again, there's no magic pill. It's not something that can be solved overnight. But we feel there's an opportunity to make an impact, to do something, and that's what we're trying to do, both ourselves and create meaningful partnerships with other companies to make a difference.
Very good. So time check, we've got 5 minutes more left. So Mazlin, I want to hear your reply on the talent perspective. I know there are a lot of questions in the Q&A section, but I scanned it through. It's pretty much everything we spoke about, except one question. I'll save it for the end. So Mazlin, tell us your perspective on talents.
So, how come you didn't invite me for that boot camp?
Yeah. Next round.
I'm like,
You don't have enough money to.
Oh,
yeah. I'm like, you're creating all this pipeline, and very well we have also that issue. We would love to be in your next boot camp if there's any. Jokes aside, I think it is very challenging. I think from my perspective and the ones that I've interviewed, wants to come in. One of the biggest challenge I have is telling them that, or the talents, that they have creative freedom within Setel to problem solve, for the customers, right? I think the biasness that comes being a subsidiary of Petronas means you must be like Petronas. Sometimes scares the bejesus out of a lot of people. And so the first question I always get is, how are you different, right? So there is a biases or narrative towards Petronas's, I guess, way of working or the way they portray themselves or appear themselves. But having said that, yesterday, Aadrin and I had an engagement where we had both teams, in Setel's office, and we were engaging with them. And I saw his talent pool, and they were as diverse or even more so than mine. And then I was telling him, how on earth did you get all these talents to join you? I mean, clearly they have no issues working for
Through
Petronas.
my sheer personality, right, Vikesh?
Clearly.
So I'm like, wait a minute, how is it that, he's getting, those kind of talents, diverse from race, age, gender, and I'm like, something must have gone right for him, for those talents to want to join Petronas, right? And so, having said that, perhaps, we need to collaborate more and find and create that demand that you're looking for, just so that when you work on the supply, it also comes through to our side. But by and large, the talent pools that I get are also very, very young, and they're looking for growth in terms of their portfolio, what they can do, what they can put into their CV. They're looking at a way to also lend their creativity and be part of that journey, and I guess lend their name as part of the legacy. So the questions that I get asked when they want to join is, in what way can I grow within their organization? How can I value add to your vision? What legacy can I leave behind? And so those questions, I knew then that, okay, these are the sort of talents that I'm interested to bring in, because you're not just software engineer or data scientist, right? You want to be part of that legacy, part of that journey. And that level of ownership that I see coming through, it's amazing. But there's not that many of them out there, right? And so, again, going back to grassroots, getting them on board early on, maybe a year or two after graduation, would be key. And the more senior folks, senior talent coming through, I guess they also come with a wider experience perspective that can also lend an enterprise view of sorts. Because Setel is no longer that small baby 3 years ago, we've now scaled to a point where what got us here will not get us to the next 3, 4, 5 years. And so a different skill set, different management type of skill set is needed, right? So how do you then infuse these two, I guess, talent archetypes? So that's my current challenge today, right? Telling the young ones that these guys are not the typical managers that you'd be working with, but you need managers to also help you in prioritizing your work, making sure that you resolve problems quickly, and that whole harmonization is tricky.
Very nice. Okay, smack on the dot, 3 o'clock. I just want to squeeze in this question. Just hear your thoughts, your final yay or nay. Web 3.0, something Petronas will look into?
Yay.
Yes, especially when we start looking at the energy challenge, there's a lot more interoperability and trust platforms that we need to build. That's an interesting space for me.
There you go. Aadrin from Petronas, CDO of Petronas, and Mazlin, CEO of Setel, sharing their thoughts on leveraging technology, talent, innovation, and everything in between, having internal stakeholders, external, how they've been navigating the corporate innovation journey, and how you startups can think about partnering them. And I guess the whole idea of this hackathon was, from a PNB group perspective, see what you could do with ASNB. And I think with that, more corporates are going to be more open to doing this kind of experiments, and hoping corporate Malaysia will take startups by storm and co-create with all of you. So good luck with the hackathon. Thank you, Aadrin and Mazlin, for being with us today. And that's a wrap. You may now disconnect. Oh,
Thank you,
wait, you got
everyone.
last word today.
No worries. Great. Thank you so much, Mazlin, Adrian, and Vikesh for the insightful discussion on digital transformation as well as innovation. And we hope that all participants have benefited from the session. Thank you so much once again. And to all hackathon participants, we will see you later for our final webinar for the day on Raise My App, ideation to realization at 4 p.m. Stay tuned and see all of you later. Bye, everyone.